They came for my lighthouse at dawn, just as the fog rolled in thick as clam chowder off Penobscot Bay. I was out on the widow's walk of the old keeper's cottage, coffee steaming in my chipped Coast Guard mug, the salt air sharp enough to cut glass, mingling with the faint, briny tang of low tide exposing the barnacle-crusted rocks below. The bell buoy clanged lazy in the distance, a rhythm I'd known since I was knee-high to a lobster trap, and the gulls wheeled overhead, their cries like laughter mocking the quiet. That's when I heard it, the whine of an electric scooter zipping up the gravel path, spitting pebbles like buckshot. Before I could even set my mug down, there she was, Evelyn Hargrove, Queen Bee of what she called the Maine Shores Preservation League, waving a clipboard like it was the friggin' Declaration of Independence. "Mr. Harlan. Harlan Whitaker. You need to cease operations immediately," she bellowed, her voice slicing through the mist like a foghorn. She was decked out in head-to-toe LL Bean khakis starched to cardboard, a fleece vest embroidered with her sham society's logo, and those oversized sunglasses that screamed, "I'm important, but I don't want you to see me roll my eyes." Her hair was a helmet of highlights, too perfect for 6:15 a.m., and she clutched a thermos that probably held kale smoothies, not the black coffee that keeps a man alive out here. I leaned on the railing, the wood warm from the rising sun peeking through the haze, and took a slow sip. "Evelyn, it's barely light. The guests aren't even up for breakfast yet. What's this about now?" She thrust the clipboard forward, pages fluttering like trapped gulls. "This is your final warning. Your lighthouse is a navigational hazard. We've documented over 300 complaints from boaters, fishermen, even the damn whale watch tours. The light's too bright, the foghorn too loud, it scares the seals. And don't get me started on the B&B tourists traipsing all over historic bluffs, it's an ecological disaster." I glanced at the papers, printed emails from anonymous concerned citizens, blurry photos of my lantern room glowing at dusk, and a petition with 50 signatures, half of them from out-of-staters she'd roped in via some Facebook group. The seals, the nearest haul out was 3 miles east, and my foghorn hadn't blown since the automation in '98. But Evelyn didn't care about facts. She cared about control, about turning the spit of granite into her personal empire of condos and eco-resorts. What would you do if a busybody from away showed up at your door, waving fake paperwork to shut down the family legacy that's kept you sane for decades? Would you laugh it off, or dig in your heels like a stubborn old longliner? Drop your revenge or restraint strategy in the comments. And hey, before we dive into this mess, where are you tuning in from? Maine, California, some landlocked state dreaming of the sea? Let me know below. Let's see if this tidal wave of nonsense reaches the Great Lakes. My name's Harlan Whitaker, 58 years young, retired Coast Guard warrant officer, and third-generation keeper of the Whitaker Light on the ragged coast of Midcoast, Maine, about 20 miles north of Camden. The kind of place where the wind off the bay carries the scent of pine sap and fish guts from the docks, where your boots crunch over kelp-strewn pebbles instead of concrete, and the only traffic jam is a line of pickup trucks at the Lobster Pound on payday. We've held this 2-acre point since 1872, when my great-grandpa Ezra lit the first kerosene lamp to guide schooners past the Devil's Teeth, a jagged reef that's claimed more hulls than I can count. He built the cottage with his own hands, quarried the granite for the tower from the cliffs behind it, and every Whitaker since has added a piece: my grandpa's widow's walk for spotting wrecks, my dad's solar panels to keep the light green. I'm a widower these days, lost Ellie to cancer 3 years back, the kind that sneaks up like a nor'easter. No kids, just a sister up in Bangor and a nephew who's more interested in TikTok than tides. The B&B started as a whim after retirement, a way to keep the place from crumbling into the surf. 4 rooms in the cottage, breakfasts of blueberry pancakes and fresh quahog chowder, guests who come for the view, the Atlantic stretching endless, whipped to froth by the wind, and leave with stories of ghost ships and seal pups. It pays the taxes, keeps the salt off the shingles, and fills the quiet nights with laughter echoing off the tower. That lights my anchor, the steady sweep that's outlasted storms and shipwrecks. It's not just a beacon, it's Ellie's laugh in the beam, my dad's call-used hands on the ladder, Ezra's grit against the gale. Then, 18 months ago, Evelyn Hargrove washed ashore. 55, transplanted from Boston suburbs, with a McMansion on the hill overlooking the village and a husband who commuted to hedge funds until he bailed for a younger model in the Caymans. She rolled into town in a Prius plastered with Save Our Shores stickers, bought the old cannery and turned it into a wellness center, yoga on driftwood, 200 smoothies with goji berries nobody's heard of. Elected herself president of this Maine Shores Preservation League 6 weeks later, claiming it was a non-profit dedicated to protecting our fragile coastline from overdevelopment. Dues from 40 suckers, mostly summer people and a few locals scared of change, funded her crusades, petitions against new docks, boycotts of the bait shop for plastic pollution, and now, me. It started small. A letter in April, on letterhead with a fancy lighthouse graphic that looked nothing like mine. Dear Mr. Whitaker, the League has received complaints regarding light pollution from Whitaker Light impacting migratory bird patterns. Cease operation or face regulatory action. I chuckled over my chowder, filed it with the junk mail. Birds, the light's red sector hadn't changed since Reagan. But Evelyn wasn't one to fade with the tide. She wanted my point for her big dream, a sustainable resort of glass-walled cabins, helipad for VIPs, the works. My lighthouse an eyesore blocking her view. So she amped it up, turning whispers into waves. 2 weeks after the letter, I got my first official visit. I was in the lantern room, polishing the Fresnel lens, the 1,000 prisms catching the sun like bottled rainbows, the air thick with lemon oil and sea brine, when my phone buzzed. Village Dispatch, Harlan, got a call about a structure fire at your place. Units en route. Heart in my throat, I bolted down the spiral stairs, boots thumping on iron treads that echoed like a drum in a barrel. Sirens wailed from the village a mile inland, lights flashing through the fog. By the time the truck screeched up, gravel spraying like sea foam, I was out front, waving them down. False alarm, probably a flare up from the chimney brush I did yesterday. The chief, old Pete Landry, fought beside my dad in Korea, eyed me, then the cottage. Smoke wisped lazy from the stack, harmless as a sigh. Caller said flames shooting 20 feet. Described a dangerous old tower ready to topple. We both knew who. Evelyn, perched on her deck with binoculars, dialing 911 for the thrill. Pete shook his head, the truck's diesel rumble fading as they rolled out. Harlan, document this. She's fishing for violations. I did. Snapped photos of the all-clear report, the faint char on the bricks. But it stung, that false siren cutting through the morning calm, guests peeking from curtains, wondering if the old keeper's place was cursed. She didn't stop at sirens. By June, the complaints piled up like driftwood after a blow, my B&B's unauthorized signage, the carved whale on the gate, hand-lettered by my nephew, violating aesthetic codes. A fine of 200, waived when I proved the village had no such ordinance. Then noise disturbances, the creak of my wind chimes, made from buoys and shells, disrupting nocturnal wildlife. I countered with a sound study from a buddy at the university, decibels lower than a lobster boat idling. But Evelyn was a maestro of manipulation. She flooded the village Facebook group with posts, "Is Whitaker Light endangering our bay? Share your sightings of confused seabirds." Doctored photos of gulls circling my tower, Comments from outs she ran herself, as a lifelong Mainer, this breaks my heart. Sell to the league, they'll preserve it properly. I don't do social media, prefer the squawk of the VHF radio to likes, but my bookings dipped 20%. Guests cancelling, whispering about that haunted light or activist drama. One night, after a no-show couple from Portland, I sat on the Widow's Walk with a beer, the foam hissing like surf, stars pricking the velvet sky, and felt the weight. This wasn't just harassment, it was an assault on the rhythm of my days, the sizzle of bacon on the griddle for strangers who became friends, the glow of the lens sweeping the dark like a heartbeat. Evelyn saw me as a relic to clear out, a quiet vet who wouldn't bark back. She was half right. I don't yell. I endure. And endure I did, through July's heat waves that turned the bay to steam and August's tourists jamming the roads with convertibles reeking of sunscreen. But resilience has its tools. I started a log, every call, every fine, every post screenshot by Pete's wife, who ran the library and had the group's pulse. Called in favors my old now a state rep, who faxed me regs on coastal beacons. Hired a lawyer, Selena Torres, a sharp-eyed attorney from Rockland who'd sued polluters for the Fishermen's Co-op. Harlan, she said over lobster rolls at the harbor shack, the air salty with fry oil and gull droppings, this league smells fishy. Number 501c3 filing, they're flying without a tower. We filed a cease and desist for defamation, but Evelyn dodged, claiming protected speech for environmental advocacy. Tension built like a squall line, petty fines.